What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Midwest Sports Hour. My name is Isaiah Bella. NFL season might be over, but football is very much still in the air. The NFL Combine has already started. We got free agent updates already. We got trade candidates already. We've got like a million great running backs out there that are looking for new teams. Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. Yeah, I mean, you've got like 10 teams that need quarterbacks that maybe they'll sign one, maybe they'll draft one. Where's Kirk going to go? Where's Baker Mayfield going to go? Who knows? But one thing we do know, the NFL draft runs through Chicago currently. We don't know if they're going to keep that number one pick. I think they will, but we'll talk about that later. Justin Fields, obviously he's available right now if they do keep the number one pick. And, you know, he's got some suitors out there. Before I get into that, before I start talking about the Justin Fields drama and the Caleb Williams and Drake May stuff and what decision they might make, I want to jump into a couple notes from the NFL Combine. So, first of all, since we already talked about Michigan football in the last episode, might as well talk about JJ McCarthy, right? I had a feeling, and I'll put the picture up here in a second here. I had a feeling that once the Combine rolled around, JJ McCarthy was going to have a really good workout, and people were going to see just how good his passing ability really is. You know, the guy can sling it. Tight spiral, throws about as hard as anybody. How hard did he throw in the laser drill? I think he threw it like 60 miles an hour, which is, I mean, I don't know if you know this. That's really hard. He threw the football like an absolute rocket. The only person who beat him out in that drill was Joe Milton. It's kind of funny. Just because Joe was the one who was there right before JJ McCarthy, and you know, we all thought Joe Milton would be like the prodigal son, and he wasn't. But you know, the jokes write themselves sometimes. You know, Joe Milton had a really good workout too. I'm happy for him. But if his pro career ends up anything like his college career, oh boy. But anyway, JJ McCarthy looked amazing. We do have the one pass that was missed. I think he missed two passes, actually. But one of them, based on the camera angle, looked kind of bad. And people are taking that and just running with it. Like, oh my gosh, someone's going to throw their job away for JJ McCarthy, as if people don't miss passes in the Combine. But nonetheless, he looked really good. I'm happy for him. It was projected that he'd probably be like a top 15 pick. Now we're seeing all kinds of wild stuff. Like all of a sudden, he's a top 10 to a top 8 pick. Where'd that come from? You know? What, did people just not do their homework on JJ McCarthy until the Combine? Like, whoa, this guy's got a rocket of an arm. Didn't know that from the times of him annihilating Ohio State for 3 years. And so that brings up a few questions. What teams value him? You know, what teams value his skill set, and, you know, where his floor is at right now? Because I don't think, if you want my honest opinion, I don't think JJ McCarthy is good enough to start immediately. I do think he has the highest ceiling of quarterbacks 3 through 8. I think that if he were to sit behind a veteran guy for like a year, he would be just fine. You know, especially if they have the if they have the proper coaching staff to develop him. Because all of his flaws have, I mean, they're coachable. They're coachable. They mainly have to do with him getting comfortable under pressure. That's really it, you know, because all that arm strength that he has going into his throw when he has a man in his face, it kind of flutters away. And I mean those things are coachable. He is still very comfortable in the pocket. He goes through his reads precisely. And he plays within structure. He doesn't make that many out of structure plays. You know, he's not going to try and create something on his own very often, because he knows that if you stick within the game plan and you try to make the right read, you'll be successful. That's the thing about Jim Harbaugh's offense is he ran as good of a pro style offense as anybody in the pros. You know, there aren't many coaches in college football who stick to that kind of game plan where you strictly run your offense through the run and through your offensive line. JJ McCarthy, they didn't ask him to go above and beyond very often to try to make things happen and keep them in the game because they didn't need to. And so the question mark for him was, why didn't the Michigan Wolverines pass the ball very often? Do they just not trust JJ? Or at least that's what everyone else's questions were who didn't watch Michigan football. But that's not the case at all. They did trust JJ. That's why he was one of the most successful quarterbacks in college football history. He's only lost one game as a starter. That was to TCU last season, which that was the game where, when he tried to go above and beyond and try to do a little bit extra to keep them in, he did keep them in the game. How many points did they score? 46? They put up 46 on TCU and still lost. I'll never get over that one, man. Even though we probably would have lost to Georgia. Oh well. But still, you want that one. They just didn't get it. But anyway, McCarthy looks great. They had 6 offensive linemen in the combine participate today. Blake Corum, he looked pretty good. Mike Sanders still looked amazing. Even Cornelius Johnson. Cornelius Johnson had a really good combine. It just seems like if anyone was underutilized, I think it was probably him because he's one of the better athletes in this group. Roman Wilson also had a pretty good day. I say pretty good. I thought it was going to be a little bit better, to be honest with you. And overall, Wolverines are making us proud. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun stuff. Other notes, I still love Rome Odunze. I'm probably the biggest Rome Odunze fan out there. And we'll talk more about him later because of what the Bears will do with the number 9 pick. And, you have your option with him and Malik Neighbors and Brock Bowers or maybe an edge or something. A million different possibilities there. But Odunze he's top tier, man. And I'm not saying he's better than Marvin Harrison. I don't think he's better than Marvin Harrison. Marv is in a tier in his own. There's Marvin Harrison, and then there's tier 1 of Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors, and then everyone else. But Odunze is going to be a monster. He had a great day. Joe Alt, left tackle from Notre Dame, he had a great day. We saw a record break with Xavier Worthy. I'll call him an honorary Wolverine because he was committed to us at first and he should have been a Wolverine. Thanks, Josh Gaddis. But anyway, he broke the combine record for the 40-yard dash. The dash record was set by Josh Ross. Josh Ross. I'm thinking of Wolverines too much right now. John Ross at 4.22, and Xavier Worthy broke the record at 4.21. That was pretty cool. I usually don't catch cool things in real time. I'm usually late to the party. But that time, I was eating ice cream, and he beat John Ross's record, and I'm like, whoa. When Chris Johnson set the record, you thought nobody would break that. Because, dude, 4.21 is like 24 miles an hour or something like that. That's crazy. And he's a really good prospect too. I think there are some things that he could still work on, but his speed is nothing to mess with at all. It's nothing to scoff at. And of the wide receivers who you were usually the speed receivers, I think he has the better tools available to him to develop into a star wide receiver later on down the road. So that 4.21 speed will definitely come in handy, and I actually see that as a plus to his game. Instead of just labeling him as a speed receiver, That's usually what we do. The speedy receivers aren't like the great route runners, and they're not great 50-50 ball catchers or anything. They're just fast. But Xavier Worthy isn't just fast. He has more to his game. So those are really the only takeaways that I had from the combine, except for Mike Penix had a really good day. Everything else pretty much went as expected. Caleb Williams and Drake May, they didn't participate in the combine. And Jane Daniels didn't participate either. Bo Nix, he looked okay. Highest floor, lowest ceiling, in my opinion. So we'll see where all these quarterbacks go. I think I have an idea of what order they're going to go in the draft this year. So we'll talk about that later. But first, the combine will be very important for the Chicago Bears. They have some holes to fix. And thanks to a lot of draft capital, I think it's like $86 million in the cap or something like that. I might be wrong on that. It's like the third highest. And having the number 1 pick and the number 9 pick, the draft runs through Chicago right now. And they could use those things to really build a juggernaut here for years to come. The team's already so young, but they're so talented. So how would you address this? You kind of have to look back on how the season panned out to know what direction you want to go. So last offseason, they spent a lot of money at linebacker. Obviously, that position panned out pretty well. Even Tremaine Edmunds, who started off pretty slow, but he really came into his own later on down the road. TJ Edwards is a monster. I love TJ Edwards. He was such a good pickup. I didn't know he was going to be that good, though. I think wasn't he like top 3 in tackles or something like that? He was one of the best run defenders among linebackers, and was very good in coverage. Had a couple interceptions in there. Tremaine Edmunds had a pick 6 at one point. Just really good pickups there. DJ Moore. DJ Moore is amazing. I love that guy. I hope he's a Bear for life. And, the offensive line, the offensive line was okay. I'll say it was okay. But Darnell Wright was amazing. I already know people are saying like, he had a very underwhelming rookie season. False. It was not underwhelming at all. We have our cornerstone right tackle right there. He was great. He was great in pass protection. He was great on the move when Justin Fields needed to scramble. Everything we asked him to do, he did it at a high level. And I think in these next couple of years, he's going to be a Pro Bowler. He's great, man. And I got to say, I don't think I've ever been more right about a draft pick in my entire life. I was going to talk about this sometime last year. Didn't really get a chance to, but I can now. Because I predicted that the Bears were going to trade back. And I predicted that the Bears were going to trade back again during the draft so that they could stick with their guns and go with the best pass blocking tackle in the draft. Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. Although we didn't exactly trade back to where I thought they were going to trade back. I think they got a 4th round pick back or something like that when they traded with the Eagles. And the Eagles ended up taking Jalen Carter, and people freaked out because Jalen Carter, for like a few games looked generational, but he also confirmed everything the Bears had concerns about him, which was, his character issues and his motor's not very high. He kind of phases out after a few explosive plays. And ultimately, he, grabbing Jalen Carter wouldn't do much for us in the long run. Defensive tackle, I know that defensive line was one of our weakest links in 2021, but in 22 or 23, my bad, I'm getting years mixed up. In 23, drafting a defensive tackle wasn't going to push the line. It wasn't going to move the needle. So I really like Darnell Wright at number 10. And immediately after that, Peter Skoronski left. And I think Paris Johnson was picked earlier at the Cardinals, if I remember correctly. So he went first. Broderick Jones, I think he went to the Steelers. And, everybody won in some capacity. So really happy for how he turned out. Aside from that, the offense was garbage. The offense was putrid to watch at times. I'm not real sure who all you can blame for that. Do you blame Justin Fields because this was supposed to be his number one year for development? Or do you blame Luke Getsy because he's the one in charge of development? And it was just lackluster at times. It's disappointing. Week 1 against the Packers should have been the ultimate indicator of where the Bears would stand in the Bears-Packers rivalry and how competitive they were going to be for the rest of the season. The answer, not competitive at all. That was, my blood was boiling after that one. Just more of the same. Can't beat, you can't beat the, I don't know what color is this, the green and yellow. You can't beat those guys. You can't beat the Packers. Jordan Love, for some reason, looked amazing. Every Packers quarterback looks amazing against the Bears. It's ridiculous. There's even a film to suggest that Jordan Love looks a little bit like Aaron Rodgers, and that scares me. It scares me a lot. I think I can comfortably say this before I move on talking more about the Chicago Bears. My coldest take I've ever had was my take that I had about Jordan Love. From the very beginning, I've said that moving up to draft a quarterback that you were just going to sit behind Aaron Rodgers was a mistake. I said that there isn't much that Aaron Rodgers can provide to Jordan Love that he can use as success in the future because he already doesn't like working with rookies, and it seemed kind of spiteful that they would draft his replacement. I said that for someone who is drafted to be a career backup, it's highly disappointing that he would lead preseason in interceptions a year ago. And, finally, I said that he was pretty much made out to be a first-round bust because of the situation that he was put in and the weapons that he would have to work with coming out of that backup role. And I was wrong on every single one of those points. Every single one. Okay? Jordan Love, he looked really good this year. Really good. I can't even lie. He was calm. He never lets anything get to him. If he makes mistakes, he's just going to come right back, and he's not going to make those mistakes again. He's precise. I don't think there was any moment besides his last pass of the season that he truly looked like a rookie. This was supposed to be his first true rookie season, if that makes sense. You know, because he'd never taken on the full starting role. So it was impressive that he would come out the gate looking poised and professional. He went through his reads. If you needed him to make a wow pass to keep your team in the game, he did a few times this season. And like I said already, he looks a little like Aaron Rodgers. It's crazy. It completely disputes what I said before about there's not much that Rodgers is going to do for him. Because they basically have another Aaron Rodgers. I hate that. I hate that so much. But you know what? You gotta face the music every once in a while, you know? And it makes it a little easier to admit, just because Jordan Love seems like a pretty decent guy. He's a pretty cool dude. So, anyway, I admit that I was wrong. My bad. But yes, game 1, he looked great against the Chicago Bears. The defense was everywhere. Justin Fields was so discombobulated. The offense was horrible until like the last 5 minutes of the game when it didn't matter anymore. And that seemed to be pretty much the theme of the first half of the season. The one good thing you can say about the Bears offense is they had the most perfect first drive script of any team in football. I think they had the highest scoring percentage in the first drive of the game than anyone else in the sport, which is pretty crazy. Anyone else in the league, I mean. It's pretty crazy because after that, they would just completely disappear. So all of Bears fandom is just kind of sat there wondering, like, why are we just moving away from everything that works? The Buccaneers game, my gosh. Ooh. The one game that, like, I won't say the one game because there's multiple games like this where Luke Getsy, for some reason, just runs 57 screens. Or they'll have a wide receiver and a tight end going the exact same direction. They're running the exact same path. And, of course, nobody's open there. The defense reads his offenses like a book. At the very end of the Buccaneers game, I was right here watching this game, and they ran a screen pass from their own, like, 5. It went backwards, and then they ran the exact same screen pass. The same thing. And what do you know? It's picked off and taken right back in the end zone. Wow. So surprised. You know, they did this all year. The Broncos game, we should have won. This is another theme that we had where if we gained a big lead, and we would just give it right away. The Broncos game, we were winning 28-7, and we lost. Russell Wilson had his best game of the year. I'm trying to think of, off the top of my head, what other games. I was at the Bears-Lions game. Wow. What an event that was. Like, I'm standing there in the middle of a bunch of Lions fans, including my cousin who I went with, and 8 minutes left. They're driving. Justin Fields had that big run on the left sideline. Place is going crazy with all the Bears fans. And then on 4th and 1 from like the 30, we go for a field goal. What a cowardly play. Dude, you're in the hunt for a playoff spot right now. At the end of the season, all we needed was one more game to go to the playoffs. This could have been it. And they pretty much just gave momentum away. Told the person next to me, I'm like, dude, this is ridiculous. I don't know why he's not going for it. And they're like, oh, but they got a pretty big lead. It was, what, a 13-point lead or something? I said, no, you don't understand. We're not keeping this lead. Sure enough, the Lions come right back in it, and it's one of the best games of their season, including David Montgomery, who already talked about preseason that he's so excited to play the Bears. Ugh, that was a tough one. Can't remember what other ones we had. There was like 4 leads that we blew. All of them we should have won. There was a few games that Justin Fields was injured and he couldn't play. The Raiders, we beat the Raiders. Tyson Bagent filled in. Pretty cool story. We beat the Panthers. Thank you, Carolina, for your first round pick this year. We appreciate it. Beat the Panthers, and we beat the Vikings. No, we lost to the Vikings when Justin Fields was out. But when Justin Fields came back, we beat the Vikings with no touchdowns. We also broke the NFL record for the most passes completed behind the line of scrimmage because of all of the screens we kept calling. I really hated the 23-24 Chicago Bears offense. I don't know if you can tell, but it was excruciating to watch. And the entire time, it just seemed like the flaws that Justin Fields had coming into the NFL, they were still there. Which is sad. You know, it's not all his fault. Most of it has to do with Getsy because he'd never called an offense before until he came to the Chicago Bears. And, he was a Packers assistant. And so far, Packers assistants, moving on to bigger and better things, has not panned out very well. And, he doesn't go through all of his reads efficiently enough. He gets a little antsy when people get in his face. He does that. That is where a lot of the Justin Fields magic comes from because he's a hard dude to tackle. But it would be nice to see a guy kind of keep his eyes down the field and try to make the right read instead of trying to rush for 20 yards, which is not always successful. And then, at the end of the season, we cap it off against the Packers again. If we win this game, we go to the playoffs. But I don't know if any of you saw the Bears-Packers game, but it was awful. Again, probably worse. No, I won't say it's worse than the first time. Because the defense was actually doing really well. The defense consistently gave the ball back to Justin Fields and company, but they did nothing with it. DJ Moore got almost no targets. You can't... Why did we get DJ Moore if we're not going to pass him the ball against our rivals? Can't do that. You can't do that. All you have to do is just get the man the ball. Him, Kmet, even Darnell Mooney. He didn't have a great season this year, but get him the ball. You have 3 running backs who are all having decent seasons. Get them in the mix. Why are we not rolling Justin Fields out of the pocket? Maybe they tried. There were a couple moments where they tried rolling him out, and Packers kind of saw that coming, and there were a couple guys that I hadn't heard of who had some pretty dang good days guarding the run from the quarterback. And it's just reminiscent of, and I'm not saying that Justin Fields is Mr. Trubisky. I think he's far, far, far better than Mitchell Trubisky. And I think Justin, wherever he goes, he's going to be successful. But this game was very reminiscent to me of Mitchell Trubisky's last game as a Chicago Bear. Or not last regular season game as a Chicago Bear. In 2020 when they played the Packers and he passed the ball 52 times and only mustered up like 230 yards or something like that. That's bad. That's bad. I know that's more of an indictment on Mitchell Trubisky because he really couldn't throw the ball. But man, when you needed Justin to prove, hey, I'm here to stay, and you can win with me, they couldn't get it done. Who exactly do you point all of the blame to in that situation? Because I've seen quarterbacks make something out of nothing. Those are the guys who you want to run your franchise, who you want to be the face of your franchise. You know, Matt Nagy, as bad as Matt Nagy is, even he couldn't take down Patrick Mahomes. He was awful for the Chicago Bears. But he wasn't bad enough that Patrick Mahomes could have a bad year, you know, and miss the first round or something. Or get bounced in the first round. Patrick Mahomes overcame bad play calling. You know, a lot of times Josh Allen, his whole offense is just him going off script. CJ Stroud. I'm still a big fan of CJ Stroud. Going all the way back to the draft last season where I thought he was going to be drafted number 1 by the Panthers, and he wasn't. And I was shocked because he was obviously the best pure passer coming out of college that we'd seen in a long time. And this year for the Texans, he brought them out the mud. The Houston Texans, they're like historically not good. And now CJ Stroud seems like he has a real opportunity to make them historically slept on. It's pretty cool to see. He makes a lot of magic happen out there. A lot of throws that make your eyes pop. I don't see that from Justin. I don't see any moments where Justin Fields by himself will pick apart your defense and make you suffer for not truly keeping him in check. You know, we already know he's a hard dude to tackle. You can get your arms around him and he'll still sprint for 20 yards. But that's not sustainable. There has to be a time where he can scan the field and say, I know exactly where I'm going to go. And I am going to make the throw. Even if the guy's covered, he's open because I can get him there. There just wasn't anything like that this year. Makes me sad. It makes me sad because this was supposed to be the year for him. He had a number 1 wide receiver, a true number 1. He had a really good rushing attack that he contributed to. The offensive line was not awful anymore. We do need a center. The center didn't help us, but it didn't suck terribly. And as bad as the offensive play calling is, they still did play to his strengths as much as they could. And just couldn't make nothing out of it. Couldn't muster up more than 7 wins. Most of those wins, I think all of those wins were against teams with losing records, except for one. When we beat the Lions in the second matchup. Not great. That was a fun game. That was a really fun game. You thought they were going to truly turn things around, and they just didn't do it. Couldn't make it happen. Oh, the Browns. I forgot about the Browns game. That was bad. The Hail Mary pass that landed in Mooney's hands, and, he just gave it away. Whatever. But, I think that Justin Fields, for the majority of his career, has been given the short end of the stick. Screwed over to an extent. Think about it this way. You start your career coming to Chicago, one of the worst offensive lines in the league, a receiver core that has already pretty much given up, and a defense that is extremely old and far too expensive. And the guy who's in front of you is Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. So then, by, what was it, the third game of the year, Dalton gets injured and Foles is underperforming. You are expected to come in and save the team, basically. And you get demolished by a Cleveland Browns defense that was one of the better units in the NFL at the time. 5-man protection against Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. That was not going to work. Nobody who had half of their brain cells believed that was going to work. So then that season, that's the year that Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are fired. New guys come in, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. Ryan Poles is an extremely smart guy. He's a very, very smart GM and very meticulous about how he wants to handle building a roster and rebuilding a culture. To do that, Ryan Poles had to get rid of the old one. Ship away the experience that was on the roster that was old and aging and too expensive. And get rid of a culture that was essentially a culture of losing. It was a losing culture. From the whole club dub thing after having a few wins in the season, it was just kind of demoralizing. And players were giving up mid-play. Allen Robinson, I still don't understand what he was doing in that Packers game where he was blocking a guy while Fields was running, and then all of a sudden he's like, I don't really want to block this guy anymore. Fields could have ran for a touchdown on that play, and it was over after that. And, but that was also his top target, Allen Robinson was. He goes away. Imagine in your second year in the NFL, you are officially the starter and you have no one to throw to besides Cole Kmet. Darnell Mooney, he's good, but he's not wide receiver 1. He could be a decent 2, but a very strong 3. Especially at this point. But, he was throwing to Dante Pettis and Equanimeous St. Brown. Just really bad stuff. And everyone was getting injured. And at one point, his top target in a game was either Velus Jones or Nasimba Webster. I think we all remember the Bills game in 2022. Oof, that was ugly. That was really ugly. The Lions game, he got hurt. That was the end of his season there. And then this year, they stick with the play caller. Made all of us angry in Luke Getsy. And what do you know? The offense is still bad. I don't know how Luke Getsy retained his position, especially halfway through the season when clearly nothing was working. Clearly, if you used your eyeballs to see what the state of the offense is, it runs through Luke Getsy's system. And it's going nowhere. There's nothing productive about it. There's nothing innovative about it. Nobody's open. So that's what you're dealing with year 3. And then You finally have an opportunity. The Chicago Bears get rid of Luke Getsy and they say, all right, it's time for us to make the jump. We're going to hire Shane Waldron, who was an offensive coordinator under Pete Carroll. He left that team because Carroll retired. And, well, not retired, I guess. He just left the team. He could retire, but he left the team. Left that staff. He was a strong head coaching candidate for quite some time. And he brings his guys with him. They all love Shane Waldron. He's one of the more innovative offensive minds in the league. They get serious about the defense. They bring back Eric Washington, who was already with the Chicago Bears some time ago when they were really good. And it seems like this would be the best time for any quarterback to join the Chicago Bears. Doesn't matter who you are. On top of that, you have the number 1 pick. So if you have the number 1 pick and you have Justin Fields and an offensive staff that can develop him, why would you use that number 1 pick? Why not trade back? Why not trade back and get Justin Fields another weapon? Could get Marvin Harrison. And on top of getting Marvin Harrison, let's say they trade back with Washington, a step back, and they get 2 firsts, a couple seconds, and Terry McLaurin. There you go. Your offense is set. You've built a juggernaut around Justin Fields. And with the number 9 pick, it could be any number of things. It could be Brock Bowers. It could be an edge, Leatu Latu. It could be a left tackle and Joe Alt. It could be lots of things. It could be another wide receiver, Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors. Somebody. They could trade back from there even if they really wanted to. But instead, and this is what brings us to our next section of today's episode, instead of trading the number 1 pick and building around Justin Fields with by far the best offensive staff he's ever had to work with, it seems more likely that they're going to trade Justin Fields away. If I were Justin Fields, even though I lean toward drafting Caleb Williams, it hurts me to say that, but I do. If I were Justin Fields, that would feel like it would feel a little bit like a slap in the face. You know, after everything that he had done for us and the effort and the work that he'd put in since he was drafted, he has gotten a lot better than he was his rookie season. You can't deny that. And I think that it's sad to see him go, because this is going to turn into one of those what could have been type of things, you know? What could have been if we decided to just stick with it, try to stick with his development and see how far we can take this thing. But now that era seems to be over. It makes me really sad. I will never forget the moment the Chicago Bears traded up to number 11 to get him, because my teams don't make those kinds of moves. You know, they don't do the smart thing. They don't go after generational prospects. And he's a great prospect. An amazing athlete with a good arm. Just some of the fundamentals he hasn't gotten down yet. And that's the tough thing. Because if you decide, let's go through the hypothetically here. Let's say the Chicago Bears decide to stick with Justin Fields and build around him. But then you go into next season, which seems like it's still going to be a pretty tough schedule for us. You go into next season, and he looks like he still hasn't quite gotten it. There's still some things that he has to work on. Sometimes he doesn't go through his reads fast enough and he scrambles and gets nervous and all that stuff. Still hits you with the wild plays sometimes, but those wild plays don't really make up for the mistakes made in losses. Let's say that happens. Caleb Williams is no longer an option. Drake May is no longer an option. And next year's draft class is not anywhere close to as good as what we have right now. And now, after another 7-win season, I'm assuming, just hypothetically, you have to pay Justin Fields kind of what the New York Giants paid Daniel Jones. That's the market. Do you want to pay Justin Fields $260 million if things don't work out? No. Do you want to deal with another rebuild if things don't work out with Justin Fields? Let's say you pay him $260 million, and then after next season, Eberflus is fired, and because Eberflus is fired, Ryan Poles is fired. And then you have an entire roster that you're probably going to have to restructure again. And you have a quarterback that didn't work out, and you're going to have to trade him at some point. No. You don't want that. You don't want that decision. You don't want to be in that spot. What you want to do is you look back at the tape and you decide, is Justin Fields the guy? Is he going to bring the Chicago Bears back to prominence? If we need to lean on him to make the right plays and put us in position to win games in crunch time, which he was one of the worst at in the league, can he do it? Can we depend on him to do that for the rest of his career? It's an uncertainty. It's a big question mark. With that being said, I think it's within everyone's best interest if Justin Fields is traded immediately. As of today, what's the date? The 4th officially. As I'm recording right now, it's past midnight. It'd be ideal for them to trade him before free agency starts on the 13th. And Ryan Poles had already said before, it'd be within both parties' best interests if they do right by Justin Fields and they do it before free agency so that we can focus on future moves. What does doing right by Justin Fields look like, by the way? Looks like a few things. Number one, you want to put him in position with a good head coach and a competent offense. And you also want to put him in a place that he's going to be happy. A place that is going to play to his strengths and develop him over time. A team that's going to want to pay him because they are in a win-now situation. Certainly a few candidates for that. But there's only two in specific. That I think match those requirements. I love the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was one point the Steelers said they weren't going to trade for any quarterbacks or sign free agents. They were just going to focus on Kenny Pickett's development, which anyone who's not a Steelers fan will tell you that that's not a good idea. Okay, Kenny Pickett is just not that guy, you know? And Justin Fields would be a major upgrade for him. And on top of that, talk about upgrades for certain people. Justin Fields would be working with Mike Tomlin. I'd love to see him in the gold and black. The only problem is he'd also have to work with Arthur Smith. Don't know how beneficial that would be based on his work with the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, besides the quarterback, they've had a They've had a lot of players that have star potential there at almost every position. You know, they have an offensive line that's pretty good. They have Drake London, who's pretty dang good. They have Kyle Pitts, who's really dang good. They just don't use him. They don't use these guys. And then Bijan Robinson, who didn't even lead the team in carries. How's that possible? You don't let that happen. And that's also the other trade candidate that is realistic, because that's Justin Fields' home team. That's, I believe he was born and raised in Atlanta. And so he becomes the hometown hero there. And on top of that, working with Raheem Morris, I guarantee you, if Justin Fields' weapons were Drake London and Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier and Kyle Pitts, they would be one of the most efficient, most exciting rushing offenses in the league. Except this time, you can really showcase his passing ability. Justin Fields can throw the ball, man. Just gotta give him a real opportunity. So those are my two candidates. Those are my reasons why. And with that being said, the Chicago Bears, with the number 1 pick, they're probably staying there, and they're probably taking Caleb Williams, which I have no problem with. I've got no problem with them taking Caleb. I think he's going to be a monster. There's been too many people trying to do this whole character assassination thing with him, where they say that his his attitude's off, and he paints his nails or whatever. And I even said something. I even seen someone say something about his fashion week, his fashion ad. Why are we even bringing that up? Watch him play at USC. He's amazing. Even in a USC offense that was hardly competent, it was hardly an offense. I'm surprised he was able to do anything in that offense. And on top of that, USC had no defense either. So if they wanted to win games, they depended on Caleb Williams putting up an astronomical amount of points. And usually he would do that, and they'd still lose the games. So I don't think anything over this past year can be used as a knock on Caleb Williams. He's gotten better over time, way better. His only flaw is that he doesn't like throwing within structure. He likes making the big dynamic play, the big wow plays. He wants things to open up downfield so he can just throw a laser on a rope. So I'm ready for that era in Chicago. I think it's exciting. There is a possibility that they still trade back and they take Drake May, which I still be happy with that. I think Drake May is going to be really good. But Caleb, in my eyes, he's still a better prospect, and he's still the more exciting player. You take Caleb at number 9. Maybe you stay put at number 9. And if Rome Odunze is there, please, Chicago, I'm begging you, do the right thing, okay? This guy's a monster. Could you imagine? Just think about this for a second. Let's say the Bears in free agency pick up Jonnu Smith to complement Cole Kmet. And they grab Connor Williams as their new center. Let's say they do that. And then they draft Rome Odunze at number 9. And you have an offense with Caleb Williams, generational prospect, at the helm. DJ Moore, wide receiver 1. Rome Odunze, wide receiver 2. They'll probably pick up another wide receiver in free agency. Hopefully it's Calvin Ridley. Please be Calvin Ridley. He'll be wide receiver 3 after Darnell Mooney leaves. Then you have Cole Kmet, probably a top 5, top 6 tight end at this point. and Jonnu Smith, who rotates, and a far better pass catching tight end than Robert Tonyan. And the defense is going to be just fine with Eric Washington there and Matt Eberflus calling the plays. I don't think we'll have anything to worry about there. Besides locking up Jalen Johnson, we need to get him on a new contract. He's only 24 years old, and he's one of the best corners in the league right now. Some would probably say one of the 2 or 3 best corners in the league. Got to get him locked up. Then you have a playoff contending team. I don't know how far it goes. We still have Eberflus as a head coach. So as long as that much is true, we won't know until we see an actual product on the field. I'm ready for it. And I think people will be really surprised at how competitive the NFC North is going to be, with the Chicago Bears having this much potential to build something real going forward. The Lions are clearly Super Bowl contenders, clearly, and they're only going to get better. The Green Bay Packers, as much as I hate to admit it, they're still around, man. I don't know why they won't just die, but they keep coming back to haunt us. So Green Bay Packers are going to stay competitive, and the Vikings, I don't know. I don't know what the Vikings are going to do, but they have a really good coaching staff, an opportunity to get a quarterback, and their defense is great, especially with Brian Flores calling the plays there. So we'll see how that goes. And speaking of the Lions, I think that is going to be the team we talk about next in our next episode. I want to know what their priority is at number 29. There's a couple options. You know, you go with either an edge or a corner. In my opinion anyway, you got to get one or the other. Like, really need to get one or the other. What's their outlook going to be for the next season in the draft? We'll talk about that next. And hopefully by the next episode, a trade will have gone down and we can focus on the future for the Chicago Bears. But until then, that'll be it for this episode. I've been your host, Isaiah Bella. Thank you for hanging out with me. Until next time, peace, y'all.